Hey, what's up? Today I wanted to speak a little bit about deadlifting, more specifically deadlifting sumo, and more specifically sumo in gear. I've had people ask me questions about what kind of gear they should choose, what type of suits, stuff like that applies for pulling and pulling sumo. There's just a few things that I think are very important that kind of go unnoticed or overlooked or not taken care of because it's not as fun or it takes a little more work. And there's three things that I kind of want to talk about. One of them being where your hips are when you start. The second is how much gear you should wear, sumo, and where your shoulders should be once you start as well. So, let's get started with hip placement on sumo deadlift. Your hips should be no lower than is necessary to grab the bar. You are going to have the most optimal hip placement pulling sumo if your hips are as high as possible. Think of it like this. If you're going to do an Anderson squat is pretty much like a pin squat. The bar is placed at a fixed spot, you get under it, you squat it. Where are you going to be able to lift the most weight? With the pins set at parallel, so when you start, you're squatting from a dead parallel spot, or if you set the pins to where you're squatting at a quarter squat, where are you going to lift more weight? Obviously, you're going to lift more weight from the quarter squat. So, the higher you can get your hips from the start of your deadlift while still being able to grab the bar. So now I'm not saying just keep your hips really high and then bend over and grab the bar and stiff leg it up. That's not how it works. You want to descend only as low as you need to where you can get the bar. So for me, when I get started, I will get in my upright position and I will descend by putting my hips back and only unlocking my knees as much as I have to. So I'll be pushing my hips back and then unlocking my knees just as little as I have to slowly, and I will have my hands straight down. And I will descend only until I feel my fingertips touch the bar. Once my fingertips touch the bar, I know I can stop. Because at that point, I take 3 breaths, and on the third I get my breath, and I will hinge just enough to where I can get my grip on the bar. And then as I pull myself back up, that's when I start. Your hip placement should not change at all. If you take the approach to where you just go to where your fingertips touch and then you kind of hinge or like bend over and grab the bar and bring yourself back, you are still being able to start at a higher position. If you were to keep going down until where you could grip the bar completely, you're starting lower than you need to. So, you should be able to descend, fingertips, then bend over only as much as you need to, grab the bar, bring yourself back up into place, and then go. So, hip placement is huge. That could be the difference between 10, 20 pounds. It could be the difference between hundreds of pounds on your deadlift. My deadlift took leaps and bounds once I figured out, the higher I kept my hips, the stronger I was, the better optimal position I was in. The second thing is less gear. This is another thing that took me a long time to figure out. I'd always try to pull like squats in more gear. 2-ply suit, and then it would be like a 2-ply suit and briefs. And it just felt like there was so much shit in my way. Like I was trying to lift with 7 layers of clothes on. It's just like there's just stuff in your way, you can't move freely. So I experimented around with pulling in single ply. And it wasn't so much experimenting as it was when I competed single ply, I found that my deadlifts were just as good, if not better, than my multiply deadlifts. And then it took a little while of, trial and error for me to realize finally that I pull better single ply. The whole idea of more is better comes from squats. With squats, you have the privilege of that loaded eccentric phase where you can wear all the plies you want, but as long as the weight's heavy enough, it's going to help you get down to where you need to be, and then you come back up. Deadlifts, you don't have that. Deadlifts, you don't have hundreds of pounds, 1,000 pounds of getting you down, locked into that position. So if you're wearing a whole lot of gear, it's near impossible for you to actually physically get down into that position. So you are either going to go the route of starting way too high and being horribly out of position, or you are going to sacrifice your starting position. You are going to come forward with your knees. You're actually going to squat down, come forward with your knees, and then get into a position to where you're actually starting with the weight out in front of you. You're starting through your toes, you're starting through your knees, where you should be starting through your midfoot to heel and in your glutes and hamstrings. So the less gear that you can put on, the less gear that you can wear, especially in sumo, conventional as well, because when you're just down there compact, the more shit that's in your way, it just makes it worse. Realistically, with sumo, you only need something to give you that pop off the ground. You only need just enough to give you that little pop off the ground. I think we can all agree that the hardest part of sumo, whether it be raw or conventional, is the starting position. Most people who are good at sumo know that even if it takes a little while to break the floor, once it breaks the floor, it's flying up. You see conventional people, they rip that weight off the floor, and then when it gets the lockout, they struggle locking it out. And I'm not saying that's everybody. I'm just saying average. There's exceptions to every rule. There's sumo lifters who destroy the bar off the ground. But just in general, if you're pulling sumo, the start's going to be hard, the lockout's going to be easier. Reverse conventional, the start's going to be easy, the lockout's going to be hard. So try to experiment with less gear. Please try to experiment with even like single ply on sumo. We are strong enough to where once that bar gets going, and if we're in an optimal starting position, using our glutes and our hamstrings to finish that movement, it should be nothing. As long as you have something that gives you a little bit of pop off the ground, you should be fine. Too much gear compromises everything. Let's see. Shoulders behind the bar. Over the bar, behind the bar. If you see someone who is constantly falling forward, or their knees come unlocked halfway through or up at lockout, it's generally a good indicator that they started forward. You started with your weight in front of the bar. The start of the lift, it's kind of easy because you can somewhat keep, even though you're starting with your weight in front of the bar, you can still kind of keep the bar relatively close to your body. But once you transition to your hips coming through and your chest coming up, that weight is so far out in front of you that you have no other choice but to either fall forward at lockout, or while falling forward at lockout, you break your knees to get the weight into your quads to save it and then bring it back up. Either way, at that point, you've missed the lift because you fell forward, or you missed the lift because the bar had come up and down. The best way to gauge if you're starting in the right position for sumo is where your shoulders are in line with the bar. This is something that you will obviously need help with, either by training partners or by taking video from the side. If you can get it to where you're starting with your shoulders above the bar, if not behind the bar, you know you're starting in a solid position, because at that point it's just bringing the bar straight up and then locking, getting underneath it. It's not halfway up, catching it and then reeling it back. You can get away with that shit with lighter weights to medium weights, but once you get up to heavy maximum weights, you're not gonna get away with that. So what I personally like to do is take video from the side, and through reps and reps and reps, you get a feeling of where your body is in relation to the bar and in relation to the environment everywhere. You get an idea of that your shoulders are either above the bar or behind it. A good way to do that is to either picture yourself sitting back into a chair, or trying to get yourself upright into like an upright squatting position. So you're trying to pull the slack out of the bar. And when I say pull the slack out of the bar, what does that mean? Deadlift bars, slack. I mean, unless you're in, like the IPL, I mean the IPF or USAPL, they use a stiff bar. It is not going to budge. Most meets have a deadlift bar to where you get up to a certain weight, you can pull some bend out of the bar before the bar actually comes off the ground. When you're pulling with those heavier weights, your objective is to pull that so much slack out of the bar to where you are in a more of a optimal, upright's not the right word necessarily, but you want to get your torso into more of an upright starting position, because then the weight is in your hips and it's in your glutes and your hamstrings, and that's what you want to be popping the weight off. You don't want your toes, your knees to be starting the weight off the ground, your lower back. You're starting wrong from the beginning. It means you're going to end wrong. Pulling the weight off the floor, it's almost like you're pulling with 80% power, 70% power. You are pulling just hard enough to where the bar doesn't break the ground. You're pulling just enough to where you can pull that slack out of the bar and you can kind of feel it raise up, until just like the very last plate hasn't left the ground yet. When you get into that optimal position to where you feel like you've pulled yourself up, then you squeeze it off the floor. You don't jerk sumo deadlifts off the floor. You pull as much tension as you can out of that bar until you are in optimal position, and then you squeeze, and then once the weight leaves the ground, that's when you go. You don't hammer it right off the ground. It's like if you've ever been towed, or if you're towed anybody with a tow rope. You don't hook it up and then floor it, and then when the slack comes out, you tear your bumper off, calluses, injury. You slowly pull it out until all the slack is out, and then you ease into it. Then you can take off. No catastrophic anything. So kind of think of it like that. So those are some things that I feel like everybody who pulls sumo, especially in gear, could benefit from. Don't be scared to wear less gear. Sumo deadlifting, all you need is that little pop off the ground to get you started, and then once you take over, it's game over with your hamstrings and your glutes. And as long as you are maintaining a strong upright position, as long as you lock your upper back and your lats in, your chest, there's no reason why your chest should drop position. Once you lock in and start, that doesn't stop. Chest should not fall. One of the ways, in my mind, that I try to get my lats locked in, you lock your lats in like a bench. You try to bend the bar, engage your lats. What I try to do, or what has kind of helped me and some other people, is when I grab the bar, I tell myself, try to put your elbows into your lats. So grab the bar, try to put your elbows into your lats. So as I'm bringing my elbows in towards me, my lats are engaging, and watch as you do that, chest comes up as well. So you've engaged your back and your lats like you're supposed to. You're setting yourself up for success. Any weak link in the chain is going to be exposed as soon as you start deadlifting. So I hope some of that helps. Don't be afraid to wear less gear, and don't be afraid to be a technician. Your brute strength is only going to get you through so many years. That is going to run out. Eventually you will have to become a technician to make gains and make progress past intermediate or even advanced. So learn how to be a technician. And if anybody has any other questions about deadlift or lifting in general, please let me know. I'd be happy to answer them.